Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show. I'm Ginny Robertson, one of the hosts of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show. And I'm also the founder of the On Purpose Woman magazine and the founder of the On Purpose Woman global community. We're streaming live for you today, and I've got a great guest for you. I'm here with Dora Vilk-Shapiro, Dora Vilk-Shapiro, an author who writes under the name of Doris Vilk. We'll be talking about how words tell your story. So thanks for being here, Dora. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh, it's great to be here. One of my favorite groups.
Oh, thank you, Dora. I'm glad that you showed up and we've gotten to meet over this last year. But for those of you who haven't had the privilege of meeting Dr. Dora, I want to tell you a little bit about her. She is a retired dentist and is now author Doris Vilk. She's originally from Havana, Cuba, is a graduate of the University of Florida and University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, which is now Rutgers Dental School. A recipient of several awards for her community service, she now lives on the beach with her husband, Larry. She's the proud mom of Dr. Jordan H. Shapiro, an oral maxillofacial surgeon. Did I say that right?
Perfect.
Okay, great. And she's the mother-in-law to Nikki, but she is also the grandma to grand pup Rupert Winston, who was she writing a book about called The Adventures of Rupert Winston. Is this a children's book, Dora?
Yes, I'm going to pivot again.
Okay, go. So we'll talk a little bit more about your other books, because that's a real pivot, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
What you've been writing. But before we dive into this topic about how words tell your story, tell everyone how you went from Dr. Dora the dentist to Doris Vilk, author of, so far, 3 pretty steamy novels.
Yeah, so this was kind of when 50 Shades of Grey was really big. And I was a dentist, but I was having some issues with my hands. And I was starting to kind of like go part-time and reduce my hours to see if I could keep practicing and reduce this cramping that I was having in my fingers. And I was very friendly with my hygienist, Sharon, who in fact I dedicated the first book to. And we were talking about romance stories. And I said, I had an idea for a romance story. It was a daydream when I used to walk to class, in college. And so I told her my story. And like I said, I didn't work every day. So when I came back, like the next week when it was my turn to work, and I would hang out with Sharon at lunchtime, and Sharon's like, I was thinking about your story. She's like, that's a really good story. I would read that. And the next thing I know, I went on vacation. I was on a cruise and I wasn't enjoying what I was reading. I always loved to read. And I just had my love story in my head. And I just started on a little mini iPad, just the scenes I had in my head, and just start jotting them down. The next thing I know, Sharon's beta reading my book and telling me, oh, this needs to be steamier. So that I start researching, and the next thing I know, I have not 1, not 2, but 3 of these steamy romance novels. And that's how a dentist, conservative, teaches at Nova Southeastern Dental School, taught hygiene at Broward College. And then this other side of me. My husband says it was anesthesia brain for my surgeries, but I don't know.
Wow, I don't know. Maybe he's scared of that door. Maybe he just loves that door. So who knows, right?
I don't know.
You don't have to tell us. We'll keep that between you and him.
Oh, well, he's a real Winnie the Pooh. But I always say, a woman, she needs a little Tigger also.
Yep, that's true. That's true. Especially strong women who don't want to always make all the decisions, right? Sometimes, we won't get into that right now. That's for another time. We can talk about that. But I just love that story because it also tells me it's bigger than that you took this chance and you wrote these novels, and they've been well received. And I have to tell you, I love them. And I'm critical of, I don't read just anything, especially fiction, because I read a lot of nonfiction. But so for fiction, I'm picky. if it doesn't grab me, in the first couple of chapters, man, I'm going to put it down and probably never go back to it. So I can recommend these books, especially if you like a little steam with your mystery and your, I can really recommend that. But it's also, for me, Dora, a story about making a shift. You saw something that may be ending, and rather than mourn that or just get so, and maybe you did some of that too, but you didn't see it as kind of like an ending. You saw it as another start for something else. And now you're living on the beach in Florida, and you're, having a completely different life, right?
Totally different. Like my office manager, she read the books, and she was the naughty, steamy lady. And she read my books, and here she had been my office manager in my practice, Dr. Dora, and she's like, who are you?
Even that picture of you that you use sometimes, it's so, perfect, just perfect. Everything is just perfect.
Yes.
But, you look like just like a Southern lady, in the picture. So yeah, I didn't know that, Dora. I'm sure I would have liked it too. I really like this, Dora.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about words then, because you've written a lot of words.
Oh, yes.
And you say that words can tell our story or your story or a story. And that's obvious, isn't it? Because it takes words to make up a story. But you also say that we can create a narrative for either a book or defining our business. And so what are some of those ways that we can use words in maybe a greater way or a more creative way to tell our story or to tell about our business, or just talk about that, what that means?
I would say, the best kind of words to use in telling our stories, whether it's our stories, a made up story, or our business stories, is to use a lot of description and a lot of verbs, because you really want to put whatever you're doing in your audience's mind. You want them to see what you're seeing and share that with them. Because like if you're on AM and your customer, your client is on FM, they're not going to receive your message no matter how good you're putting it out there. They're not going to get it. So I'll give you examples. Like as a dentist, if I wanted to teach my patient, oh, you need this tooth fixed. And they're like, okay, but I just want to do this one. And I would say, no, but you have to balance. And let's say they didn't understand that. I used to use words in the story metaphors, like, well, if you had a car and you had 18-inch tires and you wanted to go to 20-inch tires, you couldn't buy like one 20-inch tire and leave the other one 18 inches, because how's your car gonna ride? So then they understood what in dentistry is occlusion, balancing the teeth, that they couldn't just do the I forgot which one I pointed to, the one, they had to do, the whole thing. Or like, let's say all patients love to use hard toothbrushes. They think that's going to clean better. And I would say, no, and I would teach hygiene. So no, you need a soft toothbrush. Think of your fine porcelain china. You wouldn't use a Brillo pad. For guys that maybe didn't relate to China, I would say you wouldn't take that beautiful like Lexus paint job and use like a steel pad on it. You're going to use like, your nice chamois. So then they're like, oh yeah, I got that. So in your businesses, you want to think about what words are you using? How can you describe something in a way that whether in my case it was my patient, when I'm writing a fictional novel that's a romance, how do I get that image in my reader's head to create that passion, that arousal? Or if it's a mystery scene, the suspense, it's all words that describe, and adjectives, and besides the adjectives that describe, the verbs, the action. You notice in my analogy with the teeth, it's a Brillo pad scrubbing on a porcelain or wiping a car. My Siri thinks I'm talking to her. Sorry about that. See, she thinks I'm saying words. So that's the thing, you know, you have to use words. And how do you start? You know, that's always a question I get, is like, well, how do I describe a scene? I go, well, you have to create using your senses, because that's something that you have in common with your client or your audience, because anything else would be like AM, FM. So it's like your sight. What are you seeing? Your ears. What are you hearing? Smells. What are you smelling? Is there a taste? Are you tasting something? Your touch. What are you feeling? So if you incorporate those senses, now you're creating like a real life feeling and emotion that you can take your client, or in my case, my reader, or whoever, whatever your business is, and put that person's mind closer to experiencing what you intend. It's never going to be exactly, because like my image of a good looking guy is going to be very different than Ginny's or Catherine or some of our other women or even men in the audience here. But you're getting closer to your a better communication. And what I say is, if you want to practice, is get out in nature. That's a great way to start, because if you go like in my case, I live on the beach, so I was going to use the beach as the example. What am I seeing? The ocean waves. What am I hearing? A roar, maybe kids playing with their sand buckets. What am I smelling? Salty, fishy seaweed, or the salt air. I might even taste the salt air, you know, or I might smell the coconut in the sunscreens. What am I feeling? I might feel the warm breeze on my cheek, or the sand beneath my feet. You know, the softness of my new towel from Bed Bath and Beyond, you know, like, you know, it's like just that imagery. And in your business, it's not a bad idea when you're alone in your space to look around and to think, what am I offering my client or my customers? And how can I put that into what the senses are? Mm-hmm. And then that's how you can start.
I love those examples you gave from your dental practice were just so perfect, because it sounds like what you were doing, you were meeting people where they were, not trying to get them to come to where you were.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't want to use technical language that you learned in dental school.
Yes, because that's what happens. You know, you go to dental school, you spend 4 years and gazillion dollars, and the minute you learn all that words, you forget how to talk. And so, you know, the doctors come to you and they say, well, you have blah, 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 blah. This is what it sounds like, right? Blah, 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 blah. And you're like, are you speaking English? Like, do I need to take sign language? Like, what is that? And you have to remember that your patient did not go to dental school, and they need word pictures of what it is. Because if I said, well, I got to change this tooth because we got to make the occlusion right, because we don't want you to have TMJ issues, and they'd be like, hello? But if I say, well, how'd you get here? You took, even if you took a bus, did the bus have tires that were all the same, or was the bus like Weebles on the bus, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So what you're talking about then here too, when you talk about the descriptive words and bringing yourself into, especially in nature, get into the habit of noticing what you're feeling, what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, because what you want to give people is an experience themselves. You want them to be able to experience what it would be like to read your book, what it would be like to come to one of my meetings, what it would be like to, you know, take that class or whatever, rather than just the facts.
Yes. So often we think that we're saying, because we know what it is. So we're saying, oh, OPN, you're going to go on Zoom or watch a live, read the magazine. And you think that people know what it is, but they don't know what it is. You have to be mindful yourself of what it is you're doing and then you can know more, like to communicate better with your audience.
Yeah,
so that they
that's really helpful. I'm gonna have me thinking about that more when I get off of this interview with you, to see how I'm doing with that. And we do sometimes just take things for granted that, well, I understand. I know Catherine pointed out something the other day that I think I'd done a post, and she said, I think that you think that, everybody knows that you are the, the founder, blah, 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 but not everybody does. So I think you should always put that in your post.
Yes.
And I thought, well, I didn't think not that I think everybody knows me, but it seemed like, do I really need to keep telling them all of, but yes, we do. We do need to keep telling people that make it easy for them to be part of what it is that we're offering.
And, as women, we have that advantage because we tend to be better at communication and imagining and multitasking. And a lot of what I see is, having been a woman pioneer, because there were very few women when I was a dentist. Now there's maybe almost 50%. Some schools have even more. But when I was in dental school, there were like 16% of us. And when I would go to a dental convention, maybe 2%. Most of the other women at a dental convention were like the staff people, like, maybe a hygienist, an office manager, an assistant, very few other doctors. I used to tell the men in my men's club, I was the only woman. I used to say, please get another woman. I have nobody to go to the bathroom with. And I used to tell, they'd believe anything, talk about word pictures. I used to say, why women go to the bathroom in pairs? Because we need somebody to talk to while we're waiting in line, because there's never any lines at the men's room. So anyways, to get back on point, like a lot of us were women pioneers, like you, Ginny, you were in finances. We were in very technical, factual, left brain jobs, like dentistry. Well, the dentistry, the artistry is right brain, but the science behind it, very left brain, very factual, dealing in millimeters and micromillimeters. Ginny, yours was numbers. My family was in banking. I was the oddball out. So, they were all into numbers and factual. And a lot of women entrepreneurs, we are that. And so we need to then tap into that feminine side that does tend to help us with the descriptions. So even if we have a factual business like dentistry or accounting or financing or insurance or something like that, we can still turn it into something that somebody can understand by making it less about yes, we want to include the facts, but what stories can we make up about those facts in terms of using the right words to communicate better, so that ultimately we want our audience or client or our partners or whatever we're using our communications for to hear us and to heed us and to know and understand what it is that we want and what we can give to them.
That's really great, Dora. And you made me think about, when I'm dealing in just facts, because I am a right brain person who lived in a left brain world and did quite well. So I can hop back and forth pretty easily. But when I'm dealing only in facts, my energy goes down. Like it's kind of heavy for me. And as soon as I get into the ideas, the experience, the descriptions, the metaphors, all of that, my energy starts to lift up and I get more excited. And so we want people to catch that from us, right? We want them to catch our excitement.
Yes.
I know you mentioned that, we want them to catch our passion.
Yes. And we want to tap into their passion. Like my tagline for my books is prepare to be aroused. And I use that word prepare on purpose because dentists, we don't drill on teeth, we prepare teeth. So to me, I was still doing my task, my passion, which is to prepare something. whether I'm preparing to entertain or I'm preparing the tooth for the right restoration. And that's what we want. We want to prepare our clients to receive what we have to offer and to accept that and to be giving them that gift, you know, and for them to feel that, we can create that better depending on what words we're using.
Yeah. When I read that, you know, prepared to be aroused, it was like, whoa, you know, it set up an expectation in a way that, or something that it set a great scene, I think, for what you were wanting people to at least anticipate, maybe feel, but get a sense of, yeah, this isn't just your everyday, like, whatever, about whatever. This is special stuff. And you know, we both know Laura DeFranco, who's an amazing writer.
Yes, excellent.
I've heard her say that when we're bored when we write, our reader will be bored, even though they may, and I'm paraphrasing quite a bit, even though they may not even know why they're bored. But if we're sitting down to write and we're not feeling inspired, we're not feeling those words coming through like you're talking about, and we're dealing in like more of the mundane piece of it, then somebody's going to pick up on that, and it's not going to be a match for them. Do you buy into that as well?
When I was writing my books and reading them, you know, editing. I mean, I was almost sick of the story, almost had it memorized. And before it even went to the editor, and then it would come back and it was like, read it again, edit again. And if it didn't make me get teary or shocked or horrified or almost not wanting to read the next section, you know, because like the villain could be so horrific, it was, then I didn't want to put it out there. And it was so much of, I say it was me, but it wasn't me, but it was me. You know, some of the scenes are actually things that happened in my life. Some of the things are metaphors for how I was feeling. And some of it was just research, but I wanted the reader to feel, and I wanted to feel that same passion. And it's just words. Like I look at this and I'm like, what is it? Paper and lots and lots of words, you know? And as I wrote it, you know, sometimes I get lost in the writing. I was just tapping on the keys. And, you know, compared to our businesses, when we're doing something we really enjoy and we're passionate about, you know, someone said, I don't know who said the quote, but you never work a day in your life if you're doing what your passion is. And my passion is smiling. You know, people say, oh, Dr. Dora Vilk-Shapiro, the author Doris Vilk, she's always smiling, she's always happy. No, I actually suffer from anxiety and depression, and you'll read that the character has that too, and what it kind of feels like. But we have to be able to have tools in our toolbox to move beyond whatever weaknesses or flaws we have, whether it's anything. You know, support groups, joining organizations, helping ourselves and helping others. Because if we lift ourselves up, we lift all the other women up.
Yes. So I really want to know this. Did you know you could do that? Did you know that you could write those words? Did you always know how important descriptive words were, or did it kind of come to you?
You know, I was always a good writer. I remember getting A's and very good grades in English class. And I knew that in dentistry, I was a better communicator than most dentists because I wasn't using the technical terms, and I was very good at painting pictures. Especially, I used to treat a lot of children and coming up with pictures and stories for children. So I kind of knew that I was good. You know, I majored actually in speech communications in college, even though I did have to take all the sciences to get into dental school. But I didn't know, like, I just started writing my scenes, how I imagined in my head of this love story that I created about this character, Susan Chatham, because she and her life were everything I wanted. You know, I'm short, she was tall. Well, this is, you know, keratin and nice, my hairdresser, but usually I have very short, very curly hair. You know, that's me with less assistance, I should say. And I'm short, and I was like really nerdy. You know, imagine science, you know, major, like, you know, concentrating on getting into dental school. And here I was, this singer. I can't sing. I got kicked out of the choir in 5th grade. And my son, when he was a toddler and had a few words, would say, "No sing, mommy, no sing." So imagine, you know, but she was a singer.
I said the same thing to me. Stop singing, mommy.
Yes, no sing, mommy, no sing. And here's, and dance, I'm Cuban, but I am tush challenged. And Susan Chatham is like, you know, took ballet, took formal dance, can tap, can sing, you know. And I didn't have a boyfriend. I wanted a boyfriend so bad. I thought a woman, like, you just need a boyfriend. You need to get married. Like, that's what women had been taught back in my day, you know. And Susan Chatham had Dale, my God, her high school sweetheart that was hot to boot. And then she goes and meets other wonderful men. I don't want to give the story away, but other like incredible, you know, the best bodies on the planet, you know, Tigger. But I got Winnie the Pooh. But I love Winnie the Pooh. I don't want to hurt Winnie the Pooh. So here's a way to have your fantasy and not hurt anybody. And I never say a bad word in my life. I'm this conservative dentist. But if you're in a prison, you're gonna talk like gutter mouth, right? Because when I was a woman in dental school and I was surrounded by all the guys in my class, oh, I had a pretty like foul mouth, because every time like something would break when you're doing it in lab, you would be like, oh, bleep. So I had those words in here.
So this little alter ego. So not only did you create the fantasy men, the men of your fantasy, you created your fantasy woman.
I did.
Yeah, I think
created
really cool.
both.
And
the friendships. And, you know, the characters, some of them are based on real life people, but I twist everything around. You would never know. Like, someone may have the personality of one person, but I might use a friend's name in another character. But everything's all like a mishmash. If you've ever played Mahjong, when you're mishmashing all the tiles together, or shuffling a deck of cards, you know?
So what would you say to someone who knows they have a book in them, or people keep saying, you know, you should write a book, whether it's fiction and nonfiction are different, obviously, but the process is still the same probably. So you talk about, you know, getting into that feeling, getting into that descriptive place, but going into nature, what are some other ways that somebody might tap into that and discover that they probably have some talent they didn't know they had? Or make it easier for them, so not just sitting thinking, you know, what do I say? What's the first sentence? You know?
Some writers say, oh, you have to write every day. That's not my philosophy at all. My philosophy is you have to be in stillness, and you have to be in your creativity mind, whether it's fiction like my book or nonfiction. I used to write, as a dentist, I used to write articles for local papers, and I had a newsletter for my office. So those were writings that I did that were very factual and research oriented and not fictional. And I would still do it the same way of it being kind of quiet and being in the right headspace. And then everybody has a different technique. My technique is seeing it as a movie. So as far as my fiction goes, I would see the scene as if it was happening, as if I was watching the movie on the screen. And I would just write out what I saw and edit later. So I could be, people couldn't understand it. I could be at Nova Dental School when all the students were out at lunch with all this noise hullabaloo, and I would have earbuds in, listening to music, and be writing on my mini iPad and be lost in the world of Susan Chatham. If you read the first book, and she does a one-woman show and all those songs, like Broadway hits she sings. That's how that chapters got written. And people like, how can you multitask like that? Like, sometimes it had to be quiet, and I would go sit on my balcony. So pick where you feel creative for you. For me, the beach, by the pool, on my balcony, somehow being high. Like, if I don't mean high like, no, sorry, cancel. I mean high like up, like heights. Like when I was on an airplane, my son was in dental school in Boston, and I flew a lot. I was his patient. I filled more requirements for dental school than I think any parent in the history of dentistry. And those flights from Florida to Logan Airport, in those 2.5 hours, I would put my earbuds in and listen to music, and I would write. I was in the world of Susan Chatham. So I was engaged in the thing. Now, for something nonfiction like dentistry, I would imagine as if I was speaking to the patient. So if I was writing an article on teeth whitening, let's say, I would imagine that someone is interested in teeth whitening, and I'm telling them what's involved, what are you gonna do, what are you eating afterwards, what are you doing afterwards, are your teeth sensitive, not sensitive, there's different types of teeth whitening. So I was still, even though that was factual and technical, and obviously I had to do the research from dental journals and make sure what I was saying was factual stuff, because now I'm putting it out there in a newspaper, whatever, or in my newsletter. But again, I was kind of out of my head and picturing that conversation. So that's something you can do in your businesses, because I know here at OPN, we're very diverse. We're a very diverse group. Even with all the authors we have, we're so diverse. Even myself, I'm diverse as a person. I'm a dentist. I wrote naughty novels, and now I want to write a children's book about a doggy, a puppy, and his first year as a pup. Like, how different can you be? So it's okay. We're like, you know, like this bowl of crystals that I love. You know, we're all different colors, different shapes, and that's okay. But some of the same information we can use for whatever it is that we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for that, because it also sounds like you're saying that we also need to follow our energy, to not try to force it, to not try to force anything to happen. We have to know where we need to be. To be in a place that serves us, to be listening to music if that serves us, to have quiet if we need it, not to look at it as a task.
Yes. So when I hear, oh, I have to write now, people say, why did I indie publish? Indie publish means you're publishing on your own, as opposed to going through, you know, traditional publishing. For me, I wanted the control. And as a semi-retired, because I'm not a dentist anymore, I didn't want deadlines. I lived my whole life, my whole career on 5-minute, 10-minute intervals, you know, and patients would get mad. What did they think I was doing? Drinking coffee and eating donuts? It's like, if the patient wasn't numb, was I gonna say, I'm sorry, I have to start now. I can't wait till you get numb because the next person's gonna complain. I couldn't do that. So, or I had patients that, you know, I'm in Broward and some patients are in Miami. And for those of you that are not in South Florida, it's a good hour away. And with traffic today, the Cubans, and I'm Cuban, are protesting on one of our, you know, in support of Cuba, are protesting on one of our major highways. So as a Cuban, I'm all for for protesting and supporting the Cubans, but please don't. Why do you have to protest in that way? Block a whole highway when people, you don't know where they're trying to get to. Let's not be that selfish, but you know, that's.
So you didn't want those, you wanted self-imposed deadlines, not deadlines that were imposed.
Yes, not that somebody else is putting the deadlines, right? Like these people are protesting. And what about the deadlines of all these people that are stuck in traffic now? You know, it's, so I wanted, my deadlines weren't deadlines. I could move them. I did now. I had goals. I think it's important to have goals and manifest like Catherine teaches, but to be flexible enough. You know, I want to write my Rupert book, but I need to have this major surgery. So am I going to put pressure on myself? Like, oh, I got to get Rupert done now. No, when I'm healing and if I feel the calling and I feel creative enough and I can't really go out and do a whole lot of stuff, maybe Rupert's book will finish getting writing. Guess where the first chapter got done? On a flight to go see Rupert, flying from Florida to Logan Airport. There's something about the airplane that gets my brain going. I don't know what that is. Yeah.
Well, Dora, tell everybody how they can find your trilogy, the Susan Adams trilogy. Yes.
Yeah. So the books are on Amazon under Doris Vilk, but Amazon is really wonky. Sometimes you can't seem to get where you want. So I usually say, go to my website. I have links to Amazon because I don't sell the books myself. So it's all going to be my website secure, plus the link to Amazon goes straight to Amazon and you're buying from Amazon. There's print versions, there's Kindle versions, and my website is www.doris is I don't know, this is going to come out backwards, maybe not. D-O-R-I-S, and the last name's Vilk, V-I-L-K, V as in vibrant. So it's like milk with a V. People freak out when they see Vilk, but it's really just milk with a V. And if we have time, Ginny, I'll tell you why this name. Do we have time?
Yes, please.
Okay. So when I came from Cuba, you know, English wasn't even my first language. Spanish was my first language. I came when I was 5, so I am proud to be Cuban. When I came from Cuba, my name was Dorita. You know, Dorita, Ita just means little. So Dorita. And I go to kindergarten in the Bronx, and I'm like 5 years old, whatever. And they say, what's your kid's name? And they say, Dorita. So they said Dorita was Doris. So I was Doris Vilk. I was Doris Vilk for almost more than 13 years of my life. In the Bahamas, I was Doris Vilk. In Jamaica, I was Doris Vilk. Mexico, Mexico, I would have been Dorita. Anyways, so what happens? My family moves back to Florida when I was in middle school, and they asked for a birth certificate. The birth certificate says Dora. So all of a sudden I'm Dora Vilk. And then I meet Larry Shapiro, my Winnie the Pooh, and I become Dora Vilk-Shapiro. And so when I went to write my book, I was like, who was this Doris Vilk? I kind of want to bring her back. Maybe she's my naughty self. She's the one that before all these traumas and all this life happened to her, I go, maybe that Doris. So that's how we came to Doris Vilk. It's like, she was me or she is me, but it's not me. I don't know. Because people that know me close know I'm like, funny and conservative and very classy and very doing what's proper. You see, I'm not happy that they're blocking the highway on the Palmetto, but a part of me is so naughty and dark and creative and imaginative. And I'm like, please, if I die, wipe my phone, because the research that I did to get to this thing. And I'm like, and don't think I'm a psycho. Like people are like, how did you come up with that abuse? It's so horrific. I almost couldn't read it. And I said, you know what? In college, children are so dear to me. Most of my community awards I won was for servicing of children, whether it was dental exams, providing meals, toys at holiday time, whatever. And I had done a lot of research on child abuse because I didn't understand how somebody could love somebody so much and do such awful things. And so a lot of it was based on research I had done. So please, like, people that must think, oh my God, this lady's a nut case, So that's where some of those shocking scenes come from. And I did some research on prisons, and what goes on in a prison, and it's not the best place. We don't want to go there.
Right. Well, I love that you told, because I didn't know the story about where you got your pen name. It's actually, that's a really cool story, but I think it's probably a great place to wrap it up. What do you think? Anything you want to leave us with before I close here?
I would say just remember that your words are powerful and they bring life to our stories, to what we do, the benefits we offer, and help our customers and clients understand what we're offering them, and really in our personal lives to our relationships. So choose words wisely and don't waste them. Edit.
Very wise words. Thank you. Thank you for leaving us with that. And thank you so much for all your other great stuff that you shared today. I found it really helpful, and I think our listeners will too. And I want to thank all of you for joining us for the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show live in the On Purpose Woman magazine and Global Community Facebook page. We have 2 more interviews this week. On Thursday, Catherine Yarborough, the other host of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, will interview Christy Sullivan about how to stop overworking and start overflowing. And on Friday, I'll interview Tammy Workman Lopez about breaking the chains of not good enough thinking. To see all of the other scheduled interviews, you can go to the On Purpose Woman magazine, onpurposewomanmagazine.com, and you'll see a 4-page spread with all of our topics. If you love this interview and you want to share it with your friends, it will be on our YouTube channel in the next 48 hours. So go over to the On Purpose Woman Global Community YouTube channel, subscribe and sign up for notifications. There are already more than 60 inspiring, informative, and fun shows for you to watch on our channel. So thank you again for watching the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show. I'm Ginny Robertson, signing off now. Thanks again to Dora Vilk-Shapiro and Doris Vilk for being with us today.